Hi, this is TapCat, and welcome to my latest Q&A. First of all, let me just thank all of you for submitting so many great questions. Wow, like double the amount from what we did last time. I am not going to be able to answer all of them, so to help prune the list a little bit, I did skip anything that I had just answered in, one of the other Q&As we've already done. Or if it was questions specifically relating to like how a mechanism works in XCOM 2, because really the point of this is to be more of a conversation between us and not so much, like we could do a separate Q&A for how XCOM 2 works, but that wasn't really the point of this. So without burning any additional time, let's dive in. So the first question, if I had to join one of the resistance factions in War of the Chosen, which would it be and why? I definitely would not join the Reapers because I'm not going to start eating chrysalid or Advent troopers. Ugh. So that would leave the skirmishers or the Templars. And I actually think the skirmishers are pretty cool, but I was not born in some test tube out of green goo, at least not as far as I know. And so, I think I'll take the Templars and go for the really cool psionic powers and everything that comes with them. So David Rose had two questions. What am I playing while waiting for War of the Chosen to come out? Mostly videos of people who are playing War of the Chosen. Basically, it helps provide me with material for new guides or whatever you want to call some of these videos that I've been doing lately. Maybe they're not guides, but informational videos. And what do I think of the fatigue mechanic in War of the Chosen? It's something I can live with, but I will say that I don't really care for it when a developer puts a straitjacket on you and forces you to play a game a specific way. If you watched any of my playthroughs, then you know I already don't just have an A team and I only ever bring those guys on missions. I pretty much will always try to develop at least one backup for every position. And I mean a good backup. I don't mean, I got a squatty grenadier. I really try to get guys promoted behind whoever my best is. I really prefer it when a developer gives you an incentive. So for example, in XCOM Enemy Unknown, they didn't like that so many players would turtle up and move through the map extremely slowly. So when they came out with Enemy Within, they put meld on the map that would expire at a certain point in time to give you a reason to move faster. If you want this, you can have it, but only if you move your butt. And I personally think that's a much better approach to game design than saying, you have 8 turns to finish the mission. That's it. And fatigue is kind of the same way. They don't like that you only have one team. They think that's not a good way to play. But instead of giving you an incentive to do more, they just force you to have more soldiers. So yeah, I don't think it's the best, but it's not going to affect the way I play a whole lot because I would kind of do this myself anyway. Next question. Which Chosen do I think I'm going to have the most trouble with? Really hard to say because I haven't played against any of them. I'm probably least worried about the Hunter, but on a wide open map, that would change a little bit. So I'm going to say either the Warlock or the Assassin, and I just haven't seen enough of them to really say. But I think the Assassin scares me a little more. A Lone Wolf asks, would you love a woman like Outrider in real life? I love that question. I don't know why, but I do. No, because she's just too angry and too brittle. Strong is great. I need a little humor. I need a little warmth in there somewhere. And I don't get that vibe from her at all. Lord Awful or Awful, I'm not quite sure. What do you think is more difficult, XCOM Enemy Unknown or XCOM 2? I personally feel like it's Enemy Unknown. Granted, I haven't touched it in a really long time, but and maybe it's just that I have done a better job of plugging into, the tactical aspects of XCOM 2. I know a lot of people will say the opposite, but at any rate, I personally found XCOM Enemy Unknown more difficult. Jose Malroney asks, what is my favorite XCOM 2 soldier class and why? I think in the past I may have been asked this and said it was the Ranger, but I don't think it is. I actually think it's the Gunslinger. So Sharpshooter would be the class and then the Gunslinger build, because they're just so flexible and they're so good. There's literally never a mission, never a situation where my Gunslinger isn't really good. Now, I love Rangers too. Actually, I love Grenadiers as well. But the thing about Rangers is that there are times you just don't dare move forward, into close range and risk triggering another group. When I think of, I think it was season 3 when we had Elizabeth was my Gunslinger. I really loved using her, in combat. She was just fantastic. So that's my answer. What do I look forward to most in XCOM 2 War of the Chosen? I've gotten various permutations of that question from a lot of people, and it's difficult for me to answer that. I think that for me, it would probably be something like the covert actions, because we're going to be offered a lot of these different things we can try to pursue, and they're all advantageous. And, how do you want to prioritize? Those kind of choices are always interesting to me. And so I like that. Killian Phillips asks, how do you make use of the spark units in XCOM 2 if I use them at all? And then ask questions about what kind of build I like. So the reality is I really don't use the spark unit. I tried it in my first Shen's Last Gift playthrough. I really was not impressed at all. And by the end of that campaign, I had stopped bringing it on missions because I just thought it was extremely weak. Now, I know sometimes I see people say that they just think they're amazing. And I don't know if they just don't know how to get the most out of other classes, or if they actually found a build way better than I did and just did a much better job of getting value out of the spark. But I don't like them. I am hoping that they are made better. In fact, I might as well just go to that now, because another question I received was, do I think sparks will be good in War of the Chosen since they can't bond? So as I was just saying, I think the first issue is going to be whether or not these upgrades that they're doing to the Spark will be enough that you would want them on the squad in the first place. And we kind of need to see how they play to know that. Assuming you clear that hurdle, now the question is, okay, they can't bond, so you're losing out on a benefit. But don't forget, they also will not feel fatigue. And I do think over the course of a campaign, that is going to be a significant issue. And sparks actually have more advantages than that, because it isn't just fatigue that they're immune to. When the Chosen are showing up and they're dazing everybody and trying to capture them, your spark is immune to that. And the other thing they should be immune to, well, all of the normal mental impairment type stuff like panic and all that will never happen to a spark. But beyond that, there's these new negative traits you can get. Now, what was publicized most heavily is that you can get a compulsion to reload your weapon after moving if you bring a soldier who's already tired on a new mission. But what they haven't really talked about, and it is in the game, is that you don't have to do anything like that for your soldier to pick up a trait like that. You can have the Chosen do sabotage on board the Avenger, which you can't really stop as far as I can tell. And some of your soldiers will just acquire traits like that. So it can be really annoying. Like they'll just suddenly be afraid of, a particular enemy type like the Chosen, and that can cause you some grief on the battlefield. Your Spark should be immune to all that. So there are real advantages to the Spark. And while I'm not going to sit here today and say, oh man, they're going to be the best, they might be worth investing in. We'll see. Stephen Reeder asks, could Thunderbolts 2 actually fly? It's been on his mind since he was a kid. Short wings, fat body. I got to tell you, if you put an engine with enough thrust and power in it, you can make pretty much anything fly. The challenge is in keeping it stable once it's in the air and landing in one piece. And on that front, I think your concerns are well-founded, and we'll just leave it at that. Will Gamer asks, in the War of the Chosen playthrough, will I be more, shall we say, of a gambler with Haywire Protocol? And well, the answer is no, I will almost certainly not be, because when I play XCOM 2, I'm all about finding ways to minimize the effect of RNG. And if you take a 40% chance on a hack or a 55% chance on a hack, you're doing the exact opposite. You're just putting your fate entirely in the RNG's hands. I am not really one who thinks that is a good way to play, so do not look for that from me. Andrew Small asks, have I tried writing my own mods? That is so funny you asked that, because I just recently, and I mean like within the last week, downloaded the software for modding. Now, I have not tried to write my own, and that's actually not why I downloaded it. I downloaded it in the hopes of being able to poke around in the files to get information so that when I write guides or, publish guides, they can be more accurate and I can get it information easier. I must say, the interface is just the worst. So I'm not sure how much I'm going to use it because it's really rough. But I don't really intend to write mods. I think there are people like BK, who did a Better Advent 2 that are just doing a fantastic job. And I'm really happy to use the fruits of their labor. Casper, wow, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that last name. Asked, did I get early access? What are my thoughts on Angry Joe getting it? He seemed far worse in game even than I am. A lot of shouting and screaming and, quote, what was this intel for? In his opinion, the early access should be given to dedicated content makers of specific games, like XCOM for you, not the likes of Angry Joe. Well, Casper, I'm going to tell you, you are kind of poking at a bit of an open wound for me right now. Yes, I will say that as someone who produced a number of videos about War of the Chosen that generated almost 500,000 views cumulatively, no other channel that I know of has even remotely come close to that, other than the XCOM channel run by Firaxis itself. And would it have been nice if that was recognized in some way, shape, or form, like getting early access? Yes, it would have been. I did reach out to them, and I tried to make that request. They did not see fit to do it. And so, sure, there's a part of me that sees people who don't play XCOM get it. And, it hurts a little bit, right? That said, let's look at it from the other side. If you're 2K, the publishers of XCOM 2, your goal is to promote this game. And to do that, you want to work with people that have big audiences. And so that's what they do. Like if they even spent 2 seconds looking at my channel when I reached out to them, they would look at my subscriber count and go, forget it. That's it. They look at Angry Joe or somebody like that, and he has, I don't even know, what is it, 1.5 million, 2 million subscribers? It's a lot. I'm not even a rounding error in the volume, that he's capable of generating. So yeah, they're going to give it to people like that. And if I were in their position, I don't know if I would exclusively give it to those channels, but you have to focus your efforts on the people that have a big following if you actually, want to get the word out. So I actually get the other side of the argument too. Otter of Toast asks, what is my favorite music band? It says mine personally is Electric Light Orchestra. I love ELO actually. Man, some of their songs I just still really enjoy to this day. If I went by who I enjoy the most songs by, then it's easily the Beatles, because between their catalog and then what the individual guys did solo after that band broke up, it's crazy how many songs they did that I at least really enjoy. If I was going to kind of go slightly off the beaten path and not give, like the most popular band ever as my answer, then I would say Talking Heads would be like way up on my list. They had a number of albums that I really enjoyed. Like they did a lot of songs over a period of time that I think were really good and really enjoyable. Pink Floyd is another band I really loved. Not very prolific, unfortunately, but like The Wall may be my favorite album of all time. So anyway, that's probably more than you were looking for. Drew Porter asked, what's my least favorite thing in War of the Chosen? And he also asked about my favorite thing, but I talked about that already. This is going to sound super petty, but I got to say, I hate all the new voiceover crap. I knew as soon as they announced that it was going to bug me because it already bugs me. And I've been watching playthroughs to help give me material, for the videos I'm still making. And like every time the squad gets back in and flies to the Avenger, the speaker gives the exact same message about how this band of outcasts or terrorists, whatever it is he calls them, is not going to undo 20 years of prosperity and all this other nonsense. Oh my God, it's just so repetitive and so pointless. And I hate this crap. And I hope, like seriously, I hope someone out there loves all this voiceover stuff because I've hated it since Enemy Unknown and they just keep slathering it on like it's the greatest thing ever. So as aggravating as it is for me, I hope there are a ton of people out there in the world who play XCOM and they really get a lot of enjoyment out of it so that at least my suffering has some purpose. Drew also asked, which Resistance faction do I like the best so far? And which faction do I think will be the best in combat? By the way, I really like that question because they aren't necessarily the same thing. Which one is the best overall and which one is best in combat? I think, based on what I've seen so far, the Templar will probably be the best in combat. But I kind of think the Reaper, and it's really funny because I feel like people are really dismissing the Reaper. That's my sense. A lot of people. Of course, anytime I say something like that, right, I don't mean everyone. But anyway, yeah, I think that the Resistance, when you look at everything you're going to get, the Resistance orders from them and the abilities of scouting and stuff, like oh my God, the Reaper is such a stupid, powerful scout. And I'm not even one who usually uses that role, but I think the Reaper is going to be really, really useful. And Templars are going to be pretty broken. If they only had high damage output against a single target, they would make the Ranger completely obsolete, but they don't. And that's an important distinction. Okay, this is an interesting question that I am pretty certain I've never been asked before. Joe Boo Bear asks, what are my combined hours on XCOM Enemy Unknown /Within and XCOM 2 as of now? Joe, it's almost exactly 800 hours. And the funny thing is, I'm sure that sounds like a lot, and it is, but I know there's people that have 800, like more than 800 hours in either one of those games. Like some people really go nuts with it. Actually, one of the things that slows me down, to be honest, I probably would have more, but playing for the channel. It's way slower when you record and then you stop and you edit and all that other stuff. So anyway, about 800 hours. Hates San, if I'm saying that right, asks if I have heard of a game called Hard West. And if so, what's my opinion about it? Okay, I have heard about it. I actually bought it on a Steam sale last year. So obviously I thought it looked interesting, but you know what? I haven't actually taken the time to load it. With the channel, it's like I almost never play a game that I'm not recording. And so that's just one I haven't gotten to. And I don't know, at this point, it's been so long and it was kind of obscure even when it was new. I can't imagine there would be much interest if I did record it for the channel. So I probably will never do a series on it. Texas Belliot asks, which Star Trek TV series is my favorite? That's kind of like the music thing. Really tough to choose between two shows that I absolutely love, the original series and Star Trek Next Generation. I love them both in very different ways. There's probably more episodes of Next Generation that I really like because it was on for so much longer. But I am actually going to say Star Trek, the original series, because there's just no character at least in Star Trek, that I love as much as Spock in particular. And I also am a huge fan of Jim Kirk, as played by William Shatner. So, original series. Robert McD asks, besides the doom clock and mission timers, what's my least favorite part about XCOM 2? So let me just say, Robert, I think you may have misinterpreted something that I've said, because they are not my least favorite parts of XCOM 2. I don't think they are like the best possible game design. And I wish, as I said earlier, that the developers would find a way to give you an incentive to move faster rather than putting you in a straitjacket and making you do it. But a lot of missions are way more exciting because I'm getting down close to the end of that countdown clock. That does add to the game. I will not deny that. It's also true that sometimes you lose a mission because of the timer, and that is very frustrating. And I wish that that wasn't, the case, but it is. So anyway, that take on the timers aside, I don't have a lot of things that I really dislike about XCOM. I mentioned the voiceovers. It's so funny because it's not really even a gameplay mechanism, right? But it bugs the crap out of me. I actually think my least favorite part of XCOM, it doesn't even affect me. I just wish they did a better job of conveying information. And I guess they would put me out of business as far as my guides go if they were good at communicating how the game works and like what abilities do and stuff like that. But I just think it's a shame that in this day and age, they're publishing a game that is this intricate and has this much going on, and they do very little to help a new player get up the learning curve. And a lot of people try XCOM 2 and they just drop out because they get frustrated and they don't even know what to do. They don't have any idea what they're doing wrong or what they don't know yet. And so that's what I would change about the game if I could. Unique I'm Gaming asks, am I going to do a video on the inside look on the new enemies? Probably not, because that video was just super skimpy on details. Most of the inside looks are, but this one was especially bad, I thought. And everything that they said about the purifier, I've already covered in other videos. And the things that I most wanted to verify about the Spectre, they didn't talk about. Like how to break somebody free, like what happens if you kill, the duplicate while your guy's still unconscious and stuff. They didn't go into any of that. And that's the stuff I don't know about the Spectre. So yeah, I don't see any material there really for me to work with. And so I don't think I will be doing that video. The Shadows Lament asks questions about whether I think War of the Chosen will make it more important to have a psionics lab or psi operatives. And I don't. I honestly just think psionics are completely unnecessary in the game. It feels to me like they developed the entire game and then we're like, oh, you know what we didn't do? We need to have psionics in here. I just feel like it's completely tacked on, and it's really unfortunate because it seems fun, but I don't think it's well integrated in with the rest of the campaign. And I haven't been using it, for the most part, and I think it's even less likely I'll do it in a new campaign. Donald Eberth asks, if I were given unlimited funds to create the game of my dreams, what type of game would I make and what would be the premise? I think I'll give you two answers, okay? I'm not trying to cheat, but I mentioned in a prior one, somebody asked me what property I thought would be a good fit for a game like XCOM, and I said Dungeons and Dragons. I think the idea of character progression and facing newer, tougher enemies as you move up would be a perfect fit for D&D. So I would love to do a license where I could use like the hero types and the monster types, but my condition would be I would not want to use the D&D rule system. So I don't know if they would let me do that or not, but that would be a really, really high on my list property. The other thing I would do, I loved the game Freedom Force, and I don't know how many people listening to this will have played that, but it was a superhero themed game made by the same studio that later did BioShock, but they did it in this really campy style. And a lot of people liked that, but I feel like it also put a lot of people off. So the thing that was great about the game is it was real time, but you would pause it a lot, and there was definitely a pretty serious tactical aspect to it. I don't want to overstate it, but you could not play that game stupidly and just, bull your way through. So I would love to do something like that where you took comic book style superheroes And especially if I could get the license for Marvel and or DC and have like a good game of that type, but leave out the camp and do it more with a modern sensibility. William Grimm asks, which of the two newer XCOM games do I like better? I really like them both, so it's no slight to XCOM Enemy Unknown when I say XCOM 2 is my personal favorite. Paulo Milan asks, does my cat like to tap? And the answer to that is that it really just depends on what music is playing in the room at the time. Justin Harris asks, for XCOM 2, what do I think of the avatars? And what do I think facing an actual complete one would be like? I think the avatars are kind of a miss, to be honest. I think if you just asked most XCOM players, what are the aliens that scare you? What are the aliens that you find intimidating? Does anybody say an avatar? And they're supposed to be, in the base game, like the toughest thing. So they're powerful. I mean, they are, but I never have trouble killing one. I'm never really afraid of one. So I think they're a miss. I think gatekeepers are way scarier and sectopods are scarier. And at least based on when you meet them in the game, I think a lot of guys are scarier. Part of it is you're overpowered when you meet them. That just is what it is. What do I think facing a complete one would be like? Well, here's the thing. Maybe I'm not paying enough attention to the lore. I think we already are. The very first time you meet an avatar, he's at like half health or something, and that's an incomplete one. But I think the ones we face other than that are complete because the avatar project is completed at that point in the game. So as far as I know, we are fighting complete ones, but tell me if I'm wrong. Chicken Permission asks, chicken or pork? Boy, with that username, I feel like this is a loaded question, but I'm really sorry. The answer is pork. Do I think Firaxis will move on to XCOM 3 after War of the Chosen, or will they continue to improve XCOM 2 with more DLCs and expansions? I thought they were done before War of the Chosen, but obviously that wasn't the case. That said, I feel like this game is just going to be stupid if they keep adding to it. Honestly, as it is, I think, go ahead and play it with all the DLC one time, but I don't really think that's a good way to play it. I think stripping out alien hunters would make it better. Shen's, I think, will fit in better because it's just another guy you can choose to put on your squad or not. But I think this is going to have to be it, and that they will move on to XCOM 3 or some other game. Odin's Raven Hugan asks, I was impressed with your Battle Brothers series. Wow, thank you for that, first of all. I was impressed, but in a very different way. Anyway, what would I say was the hardest lesson you had to learn for Battle Brothers versus XCOM or XCOM 2? I think the hardest lesson for me was how much less the battlefield tactics matter than the things you do before that. The perks you choose as you level up, where you put the points as you level up, and then the weapons and equipment you equip. And not that the tactics don't matter, it's just compared to XCOM, the battlefield tactics are so much more rudimentary. And I would even say, like, so much so, I almost fell into a trap of where I would kind of stop paying attention to them. And then I wasn't probably even taking full advantage of what was open to me because I kind of got lulled. But yeah, I feel like in Battle Brothers, 90% of your success will be determined before you ever get on the battlefield. Chris B notes that I spent a considerable amount of time on Civilization 5. Now that Civilization 6 has been released for a good while, would I ever consider giving that game the same treatment as I did Civ 5? Well, Chris, not only would I consider it, that was my plan. When I finished my third season of XCOM 2, this was right before Civilization 6 was coming out, and I was all amped to play my first campaign, and I did a series where I played as China. And what I learned, like, really quickly is that I did not enjoy Civilization 6. It was really like one of those sad trombone moments where I had a very open mind going into it. And, I thought a lot of the things they had done looked interesting, and I wanted to see how they played out. And then as I played, it was like everything. Like, I couldn't believe how long it just took my scout to go from place to place and explore. And everything I did, the pace just seemed so glacial. And I ended up really disliking the way they unstacked the cities. And again, that wasn't something I was like, against before I started playing, but I really didn't care for how it played out. So I'm not saying it's a bad game, because I think a lot of people like it, and most likely as they release expansions for it, which I assume they will do, people will get even more out of it, just like they did with Civ 5. But boy, for me, it was such a miss. So I can't see myself ever going back to it. I suppose if an expansion just had something amazing, maybe I would look at it again. But I really don't think so, because the core mechanisms that they put in there just did not sit well with me for whatever reason. Dave asked if I believe the features in War of the Chosen will carry over to the next XCOM game. My guess, Dave, is it'll be much like we've seen before. You'll see some things carry forward and some things left behind. And that's very common with any series, at least at Firaxis. So it's familiar if you're a fan of the series, but you don't just literally feel like you're playing the same game again. BLV, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but something like BLV Pro Gamers asks, how did I come up with my YouTube profile picture? That's probably too long of a conversation to go into in any detail. But basically, a while ago, I started trying to do a better job of making it really easy for people who were new to the channel to kind of get a sense of what I was about. And so I used to have this cat picture that I really liked, like a cartoonish cat, but I wasn't able to use him anymore. Long story with that. But anyway, rather than have something that I just thought looked cool, I wanted something that suggested, that I was about figuring things out and analyzing and stuff like that. And so I kind of came up with that slogan about solving games one video at a time. That was the closest I could come. And the puzzle pieces of the head kind of helped represent that a little bit, the way you solve a puzzle. Games are a puzzle. So it's subtle, and I certainly don't think that everybody who ever sees my avatar is like, oh, this guy solves games. What you're trying to do with that kind of branding is just have a lot of different elements that all reinforce each other, and they don't all have to beat people over the head to have an impact or an effect, and that's what I was going for. Nathaniel Felton asks if I'm going to play games like XCOM with fans. So here's the thing, Nathaniel. I've never played a multiplayer game of XCOM with literally anybody, and I don't have a lot of interest in doing that. I just don't usually play competitive games, multiplayer. That's just never really been my thing. If I played a game, and I think this is the real problem, I don't really play anything that lends itself well to getting together a group of people and playing. So if I was into something like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds or Friday the 13th or something like that, and I had the time to do it, I'd be more than happy to say, hey guys, anybody wants to play, I'm going to be on at 8:00 on, whatever night, just jump on, I'll send you an invite, whatever. The problem is I just don't usually play those kind of games. So, it could happen, but I don't have any plans because there's no game that I want to play of that type at this moment. Andrew McFadden asks if I have a preferred way to start an ambush or if it's always situational. He remembers I said it's usually a bad idea to start an ambush with a grenade. What are some good alternatives to get good value from your opening attack? So Andrew, first of all, let me just say I made that comment about opening with a grenade a really long time ago. And I had very little experience with the game at that point. I had not even finished one full campaign. So I would not say that today. In fact, I would say if I have a kind of default mode, especially in the early game, it's that I would open with a grenade, but I also look for alternatives. Like the later in the campaign I go, as more and more soldiers have abilities that are really powerful, that are going to probably be more useful than just being on Overwatch, I kind of start going away from a true ambush in the first place. So I, at this point, have anything I could think of. I've used flashbangs. when there were a ton of aliens on the screen all at once. Of course, I've used grenades. I've used frost bombs. I have just shot at whoever, I thought I should. Like anything and everything that I could think of to open an ambush that seemed to fit the circumstances at the time. I think you should always consider any alternative you can come up with. And if it seems like it fits that situation, just do it. And if you've never done it before, that's an even better reason to do it. Zacky McZackface asks, how do I feel about the Shen's Last Gift mission now that I've seen it at its best and worst? And so what he's referring to is in season 3, we went in blind. We got our butts kicked because we had the complete wrong squad, no shredding, nothing. In season 4, we went back, very well equipped, and we destroyed it. So how do I feel about the mission now? Well, my opinion is quite low of Shen's Last Gift. And I think basically what they did is they took the Operation Regal Beast mission where they introduced the Viper King and they just tried to one-up it in every way. Like you had the Viperlings where there was kind of an infinite supply. And so they just gave the new disposable enemy more health. And then that wasn't enough, so they decided to give them armor. And then that wasn't enough for them, so they decided to have them in more places. We'll have more than one room where they're literally without end. And I just feel like they should have dug deeper. They should have come up with something new other than just more. And I don't think that represents anything remotely close to the best work Firaxis has done. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call it here. My apologies if I was not able to get to your question. I tried, but wow, we just got so many. So again, thank you. If I didn't get to you this time, by all means, feel free to catch me in the next Q&A and I will try. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time.